What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Chuds BBQ. My name is Bradley Robinson, and today I'm going to show you how I made these. Beautiful, delicious, smoky, scratch-made, crispy skin, cheesy, amazing! Crispy skin, moho mopped pulled pork on the direct heat chud box, turned into some beautiful Cubano sandwiches. Coming up! This is some pork. Pat it dry. And what I got here is a pork picnic roast, pork picnic ham, whatever you want to call them. And I got this at Fiesta, which is the local Latin American supermarket in my area. And that is because H-E-B doesn't carry them anymore, which is kind of a shame because this is really the only skin-on piece of pork that you can buy that's readily available in my area. But clearly, you can still find them. And the reason I wanted this cut particularly is because of that skin on top, because today we're taking another look at the Cuban sandwich, which is one of my favorite sandwiches of all time. And I did make one a year or two back on the channel, which was absolutely fantastic. But today we're going to do it a little bit differently, where we're not going to brine this or marinate it overnight. We're going to cook it direct heat on the chud box with a moho mop sauce. And of course, we're going to incorporate all that crispy skin, which should add some really good flavor and texture to this sandwich. But before we fire up the pit, I'm going to go ahead and bust out my jacquard, which is this tool full of a bunch of little blades. And that's just going to put a lot of tiny little holes in the skin, so when we flip it over in a couple hours, that fat can kind of render through the skin, hopefully giving us some extra crispy crackling on top. Beautiful. And there's all sorts of different tricks you can do to get this skin crispy. If planned ahead better, I'd probably let this sit out in the fridge overnight to let the skin dry out even more. But again, we're trying to make this one a one-day process to make it a little easier to get this sandwich made. You can give it a little scrape sometimes to help remove some extra moisture. But really, I'm just gonna rely on the direct heat chud box cooker to get this thing nice and crispy. So that being said, I think it's time to fire up the pit. And on the pit we go. We're gonna start out skin side up, meat side down on this pit. Just got some charcoal down there. We're gonna be rocking probably around 300, 275 on this cook. But just like every direct heat cook where we're trying to get some crispy skin, whole hog style, I'm gonna hit the top with a whole bunch of salt. And that's gonna protect this salt from getting too dark and gummy while simultaneously drying it out, because salt will pull moisture from the skin, as well as seasoning it. And you definitely can't overdo it when you're doing this. And it may seem like a lot of salt, but 90% of this will be coming off in a couple hours. I'm using table salt because it's a smaller granule, so I feel like we're gonna get better coverage, but I've done this with kosher salt and it's worked out just fine in the past. But this stuff is cheaper, so that's why I'm doing it. Beautiful. And as you can see, we've got a good amount of really big lump charcoal sitting directly underneath this thing, so we're doing some direct heat barbecue, which is what this pit is designed to do. That way, when the fat starts rendering out, it's gonna hit the coals and make a lot of really good flavors. I could throw some chunks of oak on there if I wanted this to be a bit smokier, but I think I'm gonna just rely on that beautiful direct heat flavor today, and it should be a very nice, easy cook. And while that pork cooks away, let's go ahead and make our Cubano bread. Arguably the most important part of this recipe, starting with some warm water, our yeast, and our sugar. Give that a quick little mix. Followed by our bread flour, also going in with our kosher salt. And let that come together. And once a dough ball has come together, just enough to get all that flour hydrated a little bit, we're gonna go in with some of our softened lard. This is just room temperature. Really simple recipe, not too many ingredients. But now we're gonna let this knead for probably 6 to 8 minutes. And just like that, looking nice and smooth. So out we come, and into a grease bowl we go. Beautiful looking dough. Cover this in plastic, we're gonna let this rise for the next hour to hour and 1/2. 1 hour later, you can see our dough has doubled in size, looking nice and poofy. Boop. So out it comes. Boop. Punch out some of this air. Feeling pretty good. So I'm gonna weigh this dough ball out. 1269. Nice. So now I'm gonna divide this into 4 equal pieces. And then grab one of our dough balls and form all the seams to the underside to give us a nice smooth top ball. Pinch that all together on the bottom. And give it the old table roll to make sure it's nice and smooth. Just like that. And now that all of our dough balls are made, we're gonna let these rest for about 10, 15 minutes just to let that gluten relax a little bit so we can roll them out. And after these have fluffed up a little bit, they should be a lot easier to work with. They definitely expanded a little bit. So now we're gonna go ahead and flip one of these over and start pressing out some of the air. Beautiful dough to work with. Might give it a little roly-poly here, just to pop any of the big air bubbles so we don't end up with too open of a crumb. And then we're just gonna roll this up. Roll it and pinch it nice and tight. Pinch the ends together and pinch that seam together on the bottom until we've got a nice beautiful log, which we can then go ahead and start rolling and stretching out a little bit until it's nice and long, about the same width as our sheet tray, which I've got over here dusted with some cornmeal on the bottom. I'm also gonna flatten these out a little bit so they're a little wider instead of tall, and then on we go. Beautiful. Now we repeat. Just like that, looking good. I'm now gonna cover these up and let them rise for another 30 minutes or so. And after a nice second rise, these are looking a little bit bigger, a little more relaxed, and nice and plump. So we're gonna go ahead and take our bread raiser here and just give them one nice slit all the way down the middle. And now into a 350-degree oven these go for about 20-25 minutes. And I'm also gonna chuck some ice cubes in the bottom of the oven to make some steam so these don't brown up too much and have a nice crispy exterior. And just like that, fully baked off. And pan cubano is a pretty pale bread compared to the normal breads I make because I didn't put an egg wash or anything on there. These are looking a little bit too pale, but should work out just fine because we're gonna toast this off at the end of the day. But it's feeling incredibly light and fluffy and a very easy roll to make. Highly recommend it, especially if you're new to baking. But now we're gonna set these on a wire rack and let them cool down. Next up, let's go ahead and make ourselves some pickles. Starting by going into our jar with some crushed up garlic, some mustard seeds, some black peppercorns, as well as some fresh dill. We're gonna go whole cucumbers today, so we're gonna just see if we can get these all shoved in there. Beautiful. Set this aside while we make ourselves a pickling brine. Starting with some white vinegar, some water, some white sugar, and some kosher salt. And bring this up to a boil. And once up to a ripping boil, into the pot we go. Ooh, yeah. Beautiful. Give this a couple shakes. And now we're gonna set this aside at room temperature. That really hot brine is gonna soften up and cook these cucumbers. The vinegar is gonna give them that nice pickle tang and infuse them with all the right flavors. Checking back in on this pork butt over here, looking pretty good. It's been about 5.5 hours so far. You can see that salt has definitely changed color, drawing out a lot of moisture, picking up a lot of color, but the skin underneath it still looks pretty clean. And I just temped it and it's rocking right about 165 internal, so it's almost time to give this a flip, which means we need to go ahead and get our mop sauce ready. Starting with some butter, and you get that melting down. Followed by 1/2 of one onion going in. And once those have softened up a little bit, we'll go in with a good amount of garlic. Boop. And while that cooks away, we'll go in with some cumin seeds, followed by some freshly chopped fresh oregano. Some freshly chopped cilantro, a big fat pinch of salt, as well as some freshly cracked black pepper, the juice of 2 sour oranges. Get those seeds out of there. As well as 2 regular oranges. As well as the juice of 2 limes. Next up, we'll go in with some apple cider vinegar, as well as some beer. But make sure to save some for yourself. Now we're gonna bring this up to a boil. Up to a boil, we're gonna let this cook away for just a couple minutes to soften up that garlic and everything, make sure all those flavors are unlocked. But I gotta tell you, right off the bat, that garlic and oregano and cumin are really giving me those Moho Marinade vibes, as well as all the acidity from the citrus in there. Should work out really well as mop sauce, so I think it's time we flip that pork butt and start mopping. So at this point, the salt has done its job, so off it comes. It comes off really easily in one sheet. Save this for making some unique seasoning. Hashtag hog salt. Very satisfying to take off. But as you can see, that skin is still looking very nice, not too dirty or anything like that. So all we gotta do now is flip her over. Oh yeah, look at that beautiful direct heat color. Gotta love that. Nice and golden brown, nice and crunchy. A lot of good flavor on there, but definitely not burned, which is a good thing. That's exactly what we're going for. But we're gonna keep rocking this pit around 300 degrees. Might start bumping it up towards the end, but I'm gonna do a nice kind of gentle cook on the skin for a few hours, just to get that nice and crispy. And because this top side has been getting hit pretty hard with fire for the last few hours, it's a little crunchy. So that's why we made the mop sauce. It's gonna add a lot of flavor and soften that up for us. So just gonna keep this bad boy nearby and periodically come out and just give it a little dip, 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 which of course is gonna soften the meat up, add a lot of nice flavor, and some of that mop will hit the coals, making some really flavorful steam, imbuing this pork with wonderful flavor. So I flipped it pretty early this time, so we still got a ways to go, but we'll check back in on this in a little bit. We are 8 hours into this cook, and this thing is coming off the pit. It's probing in the 190s, feeling nice and tender, looking nice and juicy. Mop sauce definitely softened up the top a little bit, but I'm gonna go ahead and pull this off. But first, let's flip it over and see what that skin is looking like. Yoink. Oh yeah, look at that crispy skin. Gotta love that. Very happy with how that's looking. All this stuff around the outside is just the mop sauce. It kind of rolled around and all the sugars from the citrus is burned on a little bit, but it doesn't taste burnt or anything like that. Love that sound. So off this comes to rest. And how far you take this pork is completely up to you. You know, I think for a traditional Cubano, it's roasted pork that's either chopped up or sliced. Last time I made one on the channel, I made straight up pulled pork out of it. And this one I'm kind of going for somewhere in the middle where it's in the 190, so it's definitely gonna be pretty pullable, but also have a little bit more texture. And also because it's a picnic ham instead of a pork butt, it should also have some more texture that way. And I'm probably gonna end up chopping it, but I guess we'll see how far this carries over before we know what kind of texture we're working with. But while it rests down, I'm gonna do my best to remove the skin. That way, as it's cooling down, all the steam from the meat doesn't soften up the skin too much. Oh yeah, that's some good looking skin right there. Smells incredible. That way I can throw this back on the pit, this side facing the fire, to crisp up this side a little bit, because that's a whole bunch of fat right there. Although it's feeling pretty crispy already. And while we wait for that meat to cool down, let's go ahead and get everything else ready. Started by slicing up our pickles. Ooh, looking real nice. Been in the fridge for a couple hours, so they are nice and cold. I'm gonna go ahead and slice these lengthwise so they fit on our sandwich a little easier. It's a good looking pickle. Snap test. That is a good pickle. Beautiful. Next up, our bread. I wrapped it up in plastic a while back just to make sure it wasn't oxidizing and drying out too much. Also, whenever you wrap up bread like this, it continues to soften up. That is a good looking loaf of bread right there. Beautiful. First thing I'm gonna do is snip off the tips and then cut it right in half. Beautiful Cuban bread. I'm telling you, if you guys have never made bread before, this is a really great place to start, because I can't buy anything like this at my local supermarket. It's just so light and fluffy. And it's made with pork fat. But we're gonna just zip these in half. Love that. And at long last, it is time to pull our pork. And we're just gonna dive right on in. Oh yeah, find these big bones. That's the thing with these picnic hams, is they got 2 bones in there. This big boy, and then this little guy as well. Don't need that. Oh, found another one. A little kneecap or something. And like I said, I'm going for pulled, but with a little more texture than pulled pork. And as you can see, it's coming apart pretty easily, but it's still got some nice muscle fiber definition to it. Just gonna break this up a bit, feel around for anything that got too hard or crunchy on the pit and pull that out of there. Or you could take it and dice it if you like, because there's a lot of flavor in that dark stuff. And just like that, some beautiful pulled pork. Beautiful texture on that. This is the most whole hog looking pulled shoulder I've ever made. Kind of got that pork skitty, kind of stringy vibe going. But to add some more flavor, we're gonna go in with some of our Moho mop sauce here. Oops. Oh no. By this point, our garlic should be nice and tender. So that's going in. I think all this veg is going in there. And this is obviously gonna add a lot of acidity and flavor, which pulled pork really likes to have. And we can also taste it and adjust for salt, because there's really not all that much salt other than what's soaked in through the skin and that little bit that was in the mop sauce. But this is the part where you taste and adjust. Oh yeah, oh that's really good. I'm going in with the rest of this. That citrus note is very nice. A little crushed up garlic too. I mean, come on. Boop. Does need a little more salt though. This is the hog salt that I pulled off and I just sent it through a sieve. So it should add some even more barbecue flavor for us. And just like that, I think our pulled pork is done. Of course, one last thing to add is this super crispy skin, which cracked in half on the walk over here. But we're gonna go ahead and crunch this up. This piece didn't get quite fully crispy, so we might throw that back on. But the rest of it looks absolutely perfect. Gotta love that. And at this point, you could save this and put it on each sandwich individually, but I'm gonna just go ahead and mix it in with the pork, because I think it's gonna add a lot of really good flavor. Kind of like a lot of the Carolina guys that will just crunch up all the skin into their pulled pork and then hit it all with a cleaver. But just get that mixed all the way throughout. Beautiful. Assembly of the crunchy Cubano starts by dry toasting these off real quick, just to add a little more texture and structural integrity. So I'm gonna just toast these off on the old Chud press over here. Just like that, looking good. Again, not going for a perfect toast here, just trying to create a bit of a mustard barrier, which is in fact the next ingredient. Now typically I would always go with some classic yellow, but today we're gonna try this stuff out because we've been going through a lot of this down at the Chud shop because it's a really tasty mustard. Very similar to a classic yellow, but just a little more flavor. Just a nice even spread. Good stuff. Highly recommend checking it out. We actually sell it on our website too. Next up, going down with some Swiss cheese. Beautiful. Followed by some of our lovely pickles. Gotta have some ham on there. And then we go down with a nice helping of our lovely crunchy direct heat Moho mopped pulled pork, as much or as little as you see fit. Then a little more cheese on top, because I like a cheesy Cubano. And then lid goes on. And there it is. A beautiful, crunchy, direct heat Cubano. And yeah, I'm gonna make one more. Oh God, healthy schmear. Beautiful. And now the final and maybe most important step. We gotta fry these off and press them. So I'm going down with some butter, just a little bit. And then down we go and we press. Beautiful. Nice and flat. A little more butter down for the top side. And we flip. I think I might have pressed that a little too hard at the end here, but looking nice and toasty. And off it comes. And now we repeat. Oh, look at that melty cheese and a beautiful toast. I'm getting excited, folks. After wrapping these up, they've rested down for a good 5-10 minutes just to let everything steam and make sure we got some melty cheese in there. But I can't wait any longer because it smells too good out here. I mean, just look at that meaty behemoth. Let's see how we did, shall we? Ooh, so meaty, so cheesy. Perfect toast on that too. Oh, that looks so good. And there it is, folks, a beautiful, cheesy, super meaty, scratch-made, smoky, crunchy skin Cuban sandwich. I'm ready to dive on in. Not much else to do, folks. Let's see how this came out. Oh, that is worth all the work. That is just a fantastic bite right there. The bread is perfect, lovely crunchy texture on the outside. Not too dense, even though it's really smushed. That meat is so tangy. It's got that citrus pop coming through. It's gooey from the cheese. It's got that classic direct heat flavor. The pickles bring the tang along with the mustard, and oh, that is just a beautiful bite right there. That is so good. Honestly, I think I made it a little too meaty because, you know, this is a barbecue channel after all, but I'm here for it. It just really works well with all those other flavors. Oh, it's so good. I also just love the form factor, packing all this stuff into an actual bite that you can take. Because if we didn't press this on the old Chud press here, this thing was like this tall. So you're really getting a lot per bite. That pork is so good. And the whole reason I wanted to make this episode is because I wanted to know if you can make a Cuban sandwich without having to marinate it overnight or cook it with a bunch of brine on it and still get those kind of Cubano mojo flavors out of the pork. And you definitely do. That mop sauce at the end and throughout the cook really does come through. And that citrus note is just beautiful. Not to mention all the garlic in there. And the crispy skin. Very welcome addition. This really is just like a perfect sandwich, you know. Love it. Brooke.
Yes.
Would you like to try a direct heat pulled pork crispy skin Cubano?
Yes.
Ooh, big bite.
I love Cubanos.
They're so good. It's just a perfect compact sandwich, chock full of flavor.
Chock. Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Did you not start with the triangle end?
That's the best part. Stick it go out.
Okay.
Or no.
Psychopath. That's what we should have done. Like, let's try our Cubanos. Just go right in the middle.
Right here. Okay, so you included the crispy skin on this one. Adds a little more texture.
A little more texture, a little more flavor. And frankly, it was just a lot easier of a cook than the last one.
I feel like the pickles for me is like the part that, like, it's all good, but that's, I feel like, my favorite little sneaky ingredient.
Yeah, the little pop of flavor. Perfect little midnight snack. Is it too meaty?
No.
Really?
No. And you know how I am about that. Like, I need a good balance. I don't want the meat to be slapping me in the face. I think this is perfect.
It's nice because it's on the direct heat pit just with charcoal, so there's no like really heavy like wood smoke elements to it.
No, yeah.
It's quite a bright sandwich. With the pickle and the mustard and all the citrus in there.
And even the cheese, I think, too. Swiss, right? Swiss.
I put a lot of Swiss on there, and I'm not mad about it. I like it. I'm gonna eat too much of it. Well, before I eat all of this off camera, I think it's time for the official taste test. You didn't get all of it. All right, y'all, and that is it. That is how to make some absolutely fantastic, smoky, crispy skin, direct heat, moho mopped, whole hog-esque Cuban sandwiches. I highly recommend giving this one a try. It really is a wonderful flavor combination, and it's a classic sandwich for a reason. And with this barbecue twist on it, it is just absolutely fantastic. And I definitely recommend giving that bread recipe a try, unless you can find Cuban bread in your area, because it really is what makes this sandwich so great, and it's super easy to make. And that's why I made another 3 loaves, because this is something I'll be making again, probably for lunch tomorrow. But all that being said, if you enjoyed this video, let me me know by hitting that subscribe button. Let YouTube know by dropping a like on this video. If you do give this recipe a try for yourself, be sure to tag me on Instagram at Chuds BBQ. I'd love to see what y'all are cooking. Big shout out to all the Patreon members. Thank you for supporting Team Chud and allowing me to keep making all these videos. And until the next time I see you, please go cook something outside. Peace!